This is Land of Havilah, Proverbs 15. We're still in the multi-chapter section of short Proverbs, which runs from chapter 10 to chapter 22. There's a new proverb each verse. Each proverb stands alone, usually without any relationship to the proverb before it or after it, and each proverb has two phrases. We can pretty much assume the two phrases of the proverb address the same topic, even if only one of the phrases mentions the topic. For example, when one phrase mentions envy and the other phrase doesn't, we can pretty much assume the topic was envy all the way through. And sometimes the phrases mention opposites. As an example, verse 1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Comment the opposites are a gentle answer and harsh words. In part A, a gentle answer turns away wrath. If someone expresses anger against us, we might be able to calm them down with a gentle response. And the opposite is true of harsh words in part B. Harsh words provoke anger. Gentle answers soothe anger. Verse 2. The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouth of fools gushes out folly. Comment part A is often translated to the effect the tongue of the wise uses knowledge correctly. We might say the wise person uses sound reasoning. And in part B, the mouth of fools gushes out folly. The fool doesn't think before he speaks. So in the whole, the wise person takes some time to think before he speaks and to apply sound reasoning to what he's about to say, and the fool speaks so quickly there's no way he even had time to think. We have a popular proverb that we should put our mind in gear before we put our mouth in motion. But there's an element to this proverb and many of the proverbs that the foolish condition is almost a fixed condition, that it would be unusual for the fool to ever change. But wisdom hasn't given up on him totally. She calls out to him anyway. Verse 3. Yahweh's eyes are everywhere, keeping watch on the evil and the good. Comment, we speak of God being omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, which is all-knowing, present everywhere, and all-powerful. The proverb we just read was about his omniscience. Yahweh's eyes are everywhere, keeping watch on the evil and the good. He notices everything we do, both the good and evil. Nothing escapes his notice. Verse 4. A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but deceit in it crushes the spirit. Comment, so what's the relationship between a gentle tongue in part A and deceit in part B? They seem to be separate topics at first glance, but with a little thought, the commonality is speech. A gentle tongue is a type of speech, and deceit is a type of speech. One gives life, the other crushes the spirit. It's another example of the power of the tongue, so let's be careful how we use our tongues by being gentle with it and not deceitful. Verse 5. A fool despises his father's correction, but he who heeds reproof shows prudence. Comment, listen to correction, don't despise it. Verse 6. In the house of the righteous is much treasure, but the income of the wicked brings trouble. Comment, money is power. The righteous person is responsible with that power. The wicked person uses that power irresponsibly. The prodigal son in Luke chapter 15 came into some money and used it wickedly. Once he got it, he abandoned all good sense and squandered it on reckless and riotous living. Quote, the income of the wicked brings trouble. Verse 7. The lips of the wise spread knowledge, but not so with the heart of fools. Comment, a ripple effect goes out from the wise and foolish to the rest of society. Everyone is an influencer. Verse 8. The sacrifice made by the wicked is an abomination to Yahweh, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. Comment, there are two people in this proverb. One made a sacrifice to God. It cost him. That's what sacrifices do. They cost us. But God didn't accept it. In fact, God found the sacrifice insulting. The other person only prayed. The prayer cost nothing, but God accepted it. The difference is that the first was wicked and the other upright. Quoting again, the sacrifice made by the wicked is an abomination to Yahweh, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. God's a righteous God, evidenced by the fact that he doesn't want anything from us except to do the right thing. The next proverb happens to be related and needs no comment. Verse 9. The way of the wicked is an abomination to Yahweh, but he loves him who follows after righteousness. Verse 10. There's a stern discipline for one who forsakes the way, Whoever hates reproof shall die. Comment on first read of this proverb, it seems to be saying God will sternly discipline us if we forsake the way. But there's no actual mention of God in this proverb. The stern discipline might just be a natural consequence of forsaking the way. Actions have consequences. We can get ourselves into some very regrettable circumstances to the point we feel like death. Again, there's stern discipline for the one who forsakes the way. Whoever hates reproof shall die. Verse 11. Sheol and Abaddon are before Yahweh. How much more then the hearts of the children of men? Comment, it's another verse about God's omniscience. If he sees Sheol and Abaddon, which are the places of the dead, Sheol being a holding place for the righteous, and Abaddon, meaning destruction, being a holding place for the wicked, if he sees and knows what's going on in those dark, mysterious places, how much more does he see the hearts of men? Verse 12. A scoffer doesn't love to be reproved. He'll not go to the wise. Comment, scoffers hate correction. They know the wise will correct them, therefore they avoid them. The scoffer doesn't like to mingle with the wise. Verse 13. A glad heart makes a cheerful face, but an aching heart breaks the spirit. Comment, heartache is a real thing. Verse 14. The heart of one who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouths of fools feed on folly. Comment, a person of understanding seeks reliable information. He seeks knowledge. The fool consumes information from dubious sources. Quote, the mouths of fools feed on folly. Verse 15. All the days of the afflicted are wretched, but one who has a cheerful heart enjoys a continual feast. Comment, the heart can be cheerful or afflicted. For one, life's a continual feast. For the other, life is wretched. It depends on the condition of the heart. Verse 16. Better is little with the fear of Yahweh than great treasure with trouble. Comment, there's the implication that the fear of Yahweh keeps us out of trouble, and therefore the fear of Yahweh is better than great treasure. Verse 17. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened calf with hatred. Comment, we'd much rather eat a salad with someone we love than eat a feast with someone we hate. No comparison. Let's keep love in the house. Verse 18. A wrathful man stirs up contention, but one who's slow to anger appeases strife. Comment, anger stirs up arguments. A refusal to be angry stops arguments. Verse 19. The way of the sluggard is like a thorn patch, but the path of the upright is a highway. Comment, life's a thorn patch for the lazy and an open highway for the upright. There's something immoral about being lazy and refusing to accept responsibility, because the sluggard here is set in contrast to the upright. Verse 20. A wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish man despises his mother. Comment, if our parents ever went wrong, it's a tricky thing to think about how they went wrong and to learn from their mistakes without dishonoring them. But that's just a side note. It makes a parent glad to have wise children. The implied corollary is that a wise child gets along with his parents, but in part B, a foolish man doesn't get along with his parents. He despises his mother. Verse 21. Folly is joy to one who's void of wisdom, but a man of understanding keeps his ways straight. Comment, folly is a joy to one who's void of wisdom. It brings to mind the cackling fool who finds humor in all the wrong places. A man of understanding keeps a straight face in that situation. The fool might be insulted if you don't join in with his cackling, but that's the way it has to be. Verse 22. Where there's no counsel, plans fail, but in a multitude of counselors they're established. Comment, 3 chapters ago there was a proverb, in a multitude of counselors there's victory. Here, a multitude of counselors increases the chance that a plan will succeed. You want to get lots of input when you're drawing up a plan. But counsel's useless if we surround ourselves with people who only agree with us. It's called living in an echo chamber. We need to do the hard job of listening to contrary opinions, if there are any. Verse 23. Joy comes to a man with the reply of his mouth. How good is a word at the right time? Comment, we all know how disappointing it is to think of exactly what to say, but way too late. We might not figure out what to say until even years later. But when we can come up with just the right words at just the right time is very satisfying. How good is a word at the right time? Verse 24. The path of life leads upward for the wise, to keep him from going downward to Sheol. Comment, wisdom lifts us upward and keeps us from going downward to hell. Verse 25. Yahweh will uproot the house of the proud, but he'll keep the widow's borders intact. Comment, that proverb is related to the verse, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble, Proverbs 3:34. James and Peter both quoted it in James 4:6 and 1 Peter 5:5. In the proverb we just read, God will uproot the house of the proud, but he'll keep the widow's borders intact. The widow is an example of humility. The point is that God actively opposes the proud and actively helps the humble. Verse 26. Yahweh detests the thoughts of the wicked, but the thoughts of the pure are pleasing. Comment, God detests wickedness and loves purity. Verse 27. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. Comment, we usually think of bribery in terms of public officials, but as Solomon points out here, dishonest income is very similar to a bribe. We can't let money influence us to do evil. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. Let not money influence us to do evil. Verse 28. The heart of the righteous weighs answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes out evil. Comment, the righteous weighs his answers, the fool takes no such time, he spews out wickedness without thinking. Verse 29. Yahweh is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. Comment, there's a key point that Solomon never makes that his father David made in Psalm 14:2 and 3, quote, Yahweh looked down from heaven on the children of men to see if there were any who understood, who sought after God. They've all gone aside. They've together become corrupt. There's no one who does good, no, not one, end quote. Solomon keeps speaking of the righteous and the wicked as if there's a clear distinction, but it's only for rhetorical purposes. David knew, Solomon knew, and we all know that everyone is a mixture of righteousness and wickedness. Even the most evil person can't help but do something right every now and then, and even the most righteous person stumbles. Solomon's points to encourage us toward the righteous, of which we're all capable, and away from the wickedness of which we're all capable. He wrote in black and white, but he saw the gray as well. In the proverb we just read, Yahweh is far from the wicked, but hears the prayer of the righteous. And we have to make another important distinction here, that for some of us, God blinds his eye to our unrighteousness, which is totally key. Quote, Blessed is the man to whom Yahweh doesn't impute iniquity, Psalm 32:2. Along the same vein, Jesus said to the woman caught in adultery, Your sin is forgiven. She walked away from that scene, righteous in the eyes of God, with God hearing her prayers, as this proverb says. So righteousness in the eyes of God is dependent on his grace. If it weren't, there'd be no such thing as righteousness. All we can do is ask for that grace and do our best to deserve it. We'll never deserve it. God accepts us because of the righteousness of Christ, not because of our own righteousness, but still it's our obligation to do the right with all our might. If that's our attitude, there's no doubt he'll save us. Verse 30. The light of the eyes rejoices the heart. Good news gives health to the bones. Comment, your narrator had a recent situation in his family where there were some elderly family members in failing health, while at the same time a young family member was having some astonishing success. The good news coming from him gave health to their elderly bones. Not that the young man cured their health conditions, but he sure gave them a lift. Good news gives health to the bones. Verse 31. The ear that listens to reproof lives, and will be at home among the wise. Comment, the willingness to listen to correction makes us wise. Verse 32. He who refuses correction despises his own soul, but he who listens to reproof gets understanding. Comment, if you won't listen, you hate yourself. Verse 3. The fear of Yahweh teaches wisdom. Before honor is humility. Comment, the humble person is headed for honor because humility precedes honor. But it's connected to God in the first part of the proverb, that humility toward God is what's in view here. If we're humble toward God, we're headed for honor. And humility in general is a must, or else we won't listen. Proverbs 16 is next.